Hi and welcome back to another loose watercolor floral painting. I'm working in a handmade insert for my traveler's art journal. I picked that with me on holidays this summer and I have a lot of pages left. This insert is made from 100% cotton watercolor paper. I can't remember which brand that was. I believe it could be Fabriano. I'm starting by sketching my flower with a water-soluble graphite pencil. I love to use the water-soluble ones because when you go in with the watercolors, it starts reacting and I think it gives you an interesting effect. I always recommend using a reference photo because it makes it a lot easier to sketch out a flower, and I believe I used a reference from a flower this time and I just added the leaves intuitively. I try to work super loose and I don't want to go for details. I'm wetting some areas before I go in with my watercolors. As always, I'm keeping the watercolor videos in real time so you have the chance to paint along with me. If you don't like that speed and you want to see it a bit quicker, you can use that YouTube option and speed up the video. Working with 100% cotton paper is such a difference. It's a lot easier than on cheap paper, but of course it's very much more expensive, so I don't use it so often. And also I learned that I prefer the cold press paper against the hot press. I think the hot press it soaks up the colors so good, and it's hard to get them reactivated, and that's why I prefer the cold press. I am using water to blend out the color from the blossom, just to make it look even more loose and to get some color also on the background. If you're watching my watercolor videos every Wednesday, you know that one of my tips is always keep some white spots and areas, because this is what gives you some more dimension. If you paint the whole flower in and don't leave any white spots, it will look completely flat. Also, adding color to the background instead of leaving it plain white gives you more vibrancy and more liveliness, I would say. The paints that I'm using are from different brands. I have a video where I set up my watercolor palette so that it's optimized for mixing colors, and I'm using this palette, and I also use a palette where I have some pastel colors from St. Petersburg. I will link up that watercolor palette setup video in the top right corner info box so you can have a look which paints I'm using. I'm switching to a different brush. I can't tell you which kind of brush that is. It has a really fine and pointy tip, and it's also from the Kazalon series that I introduced to you last time, I believe. But it has a different shape. I will give you all the information I have in the video description. It gives a really interesting texture, and I think it's really nice for these leaves. I'm not a big fan of green or of the normal green, just as sap or hooker's green. I prefer olive green or a bluish green, and here I'm just using more of a blue tone color. I believe here I mixed the ultramarine blue together with the dusk green from Van Gogh. As always, you will find a blog post linked up in my video description. There I have some close-up images for you to have a look at the painting. And I always have linked up some videos in the info boxes that you might be interested in. This is one of my favorite colors. It's the cobalt turquoise. I really love this color. It's so beautiful and bright and vibrant. I'm working intuitively with the colors, and I love to use the wet and wet technique to change the color and add some nice effects. While the paint is still wet, I am going in with the water-soluble graphite and add some texture. I really love this technique. It gives the painting a lot of looseness. And I'm making thicker and thinner lines to get different textures. And in addition to that graphite pencil, I also use the Derwent Intense pencils. I'm adding a second layer of paint to create more depth. This is always a step where I can ruin a painting, or what intimidates me because I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing, but I think it's practicing, and the more you paint, the more you learn, and of course, when you learn, you can make mistakes. A painting looks more complete when you have some filler elements around your flower, so that the flower is not your only focal point. So you have something where the eyes can look at around the flower, and then they come back to the flower, and that makes a picture more interesting. And here I decided to add some little berries around the flower. Here I'm also adding some more shadows to my leaves. I'm mixing between working wet and wet and wet on dry. When you work wet on dry, you get sharper edges, and I think it's always good to have a mix between sharp edges and smooth edges and color blending. That makes also a picture more interesting and gives it more depth. When my page is dry and I'm working with these water-soluble pencils, I sometimes dip the nib of them into water, and that gives me a more intense line. As a contrast to the painted areas, I'm scribbling in another leafy shape just with that graphite pencil. Here I'm working with one of the Rembrandt Intense pencils, and I'm outlining my leaves just in a super loose way. Here I'm also dipping the nib into water from time to time. I'm going back in with more shadows to the flower. For shadows on flowers, I often use the dusk pink or the dusk violet from Van Gogh. I decided that I needed some darker shadows on my leaves to make the flower pop up even more. Here I'm going in with a pastel pinkish color. With this painting, it seems I couldn't stop. It was just not satisfied, and I painted and worked on it. The finished result turned out really nice, I think, but it was kind of a adventure to get to this point. But that's what I love about watercolors and playing with them. You can explore so many different techniques or ways or color combinations, and that's a lot of fun. When that painting is dry, I wanted to add some more special effects, and here I'm using a shimmery color from Wenn Ihr, and I really love that color. I will tell you in the video description how it is called. I can't remember at the moment. I also add more highlights to the flower. At the end, I'm just playing a little bit with the color and add some blobs here and there. This is one of my favorite parts of a painting, finishing it up and adding some tiny details and color spots. For a higher contrast, I just add a deeper shadow to the flower. After the painting was completely dry, I added some color splatters off camera. Finally, I'm coming to an end with my painting, and I really like how it turned out. I hope you like it too, and I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope we will see us next time. Bye!